the questions that I want to ask now, let's go back and look at now someone with autism and Down syndrome who is not able to vocalize their disappointments.
Sure.
Through your eyes, like how are they handled?
One of my most vivid experiences, especially in Form 1, was one time a friend of ours who went to be with the Lord. I mention this because he's a brother in Christ.
Yes.
And he taught me faith. But Joe Peter contracted TB.
Did he have a disability?
Yes, Joe Peter was disabled, sat on a wheelchair, walked on a wheelchair. He couldn't
Express himself vocally.
well because he had speech disorders. But he could understand, he had a lot of insight. And as he was older than us, all of us, most of us, then we didn't understand many things. But now I can tell. Joe Peter complicated from the TB because he used to cough in his last several weeks. The guy coughed, started coughing blood, and everybody else noticed something is wrong. Nobody is taking this guy to the hospital.
But people know he has an issue.
He has a disorder. And we kept on saying, why can't you take this guy to the hospital? He doesn't need to be with us. He can be taken to a hospital, treated, and come back. The long and short of the story is that the guy died while in the institution.
So he died in the dormitory?
Yes.
And at what point do you discover that it was TB? Because all of you are predisposed now.
There was a cough, prolonged cough for many weeks, several days. There was blood. Yep.
So, as in, do you discover that it's TB when he breathes his last, or did it take weeks for the report to come back so that you guys know it's TB?
There was no report. The nurse acknowledged it
was TB. And did they do anything? Because if I'm sitting with you here and you have TB and it's not treated, I'm being predisposed. So was there anything that was done to ensure that the rest of you?
He was isolated from us.
And the isolation, did it happen immediately?
No.
There's a period when you guys are predisposed to.
It didn't happen because the condition started on slowly. It didn't happen immediately. In fact, at one point he was deemed as mad. But we said no.
For why?
Because he kept on speaking until he became call it delirium. It was also taking a toll on him as a grown-up man who has emotions and all that.
And he's trying to express himself.
Took a toll on him, and he started verbalizing so much.
And because you've said he has a speech impediment, were you able to understand what he's...
Yes, some of us had learned his language, and so we could tell what he's trying to tell us.
Yeah.
There was pain. I remember I was in Form 1, so when we closed schools, when he came, I was asked to talk to him. Most of the times I used to calm him down.
So what the picture I'm getting right now is, let's take this institution that we are talking about. It's bad enough to have a disability, but it's also worse if you are not able to vocalize.
Oh yes.
Because now I'm trying to imagine someone with Down syndrome in that institution, and autism and intellectual disability. The common denominator for all these people is that they cannot express themselves.
They cannot.
And then now you've put them here, and nobody is patient to learn their language of communication.
Yes.
So now that's a whole problem. So you will spend quite a large number of time with untreated conditions.
Yes. Again, another condition is where we have a lady who grew up. She had mental learning challenges, mental disability. And at one point, she gets pregnant.
Oh, by who?
We took upon ourselves to inquire. It was a little bit strange. But we, of course, later on discovered it was one of the staffs, a watchman, who was involved in the pregnancy.
And what happened?
So the lady was allowed to carry the pregnancy. Yeah, we noticed at one point she could be taken for antenatal visits. Since there was a nurse, probably they could do what we do to women who are expectant.
Mm-hmm.
But of course we know, and I remember this vividly again. She delivered. It was an evening. She was taken to the hospital when labor pains began. She was kept indoors, so most of the time the house mother who was with him, being a mother, probably understood well. Of course she went, she delivered, came back. But later on, after she had breastfed the baby and all that, it was difficult. We don't know what was done to the watchman. All we know that the watchman at some point was interdicted but came back. Hizo story ndio tunasema kwa kimombo, kwa Kiswahili, sorry, ilikanyagiwa chini. Of course we could tell that there was a miss legally and all that. So the baby, after the baby grew up later on, it has made one of the classical, I could call it a scandal.
So
the baby was adopted.
Did she consent to the adoption?
No.
So
to date, we know she mourns because she would say, I want my baby.
Yeah.
I want my baby.
So did you ever follow up where this lady went or what she does today?
Well, one of the sad things is when an institution has to change its blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
And we were caught up in the middle of it, where the stakeholders had to change the blueprint and the running affairs of daily affairs of the institution, and where the law was applied, though it negatively affected most of us because we were forced to undergo a transition through not the normal way. The law is so clear that when you're committed in the in the care institution, you're committed for 18 years or up to the age of 21.
Mm-hmm.
And the law is clear that there is a procedure of settling you down into the nearby community if you, for example, they are not able to trace your relatives or guardians. And then there is a way you're put through a halfway house kind of a system until you are self-reliant. But that never happened to most of us. Now the worst was the same people you're asking about. They're mentally handicapped, challenged. They are not able to express themselves. They are defenseless, for the lack of a better word. They are defenseless. And so what happened is that they were being tossed. So at one point they were taken to a halfway house.
What's a halfway house?
Halfway house is like it's a situation or it's a program where you are halfway, like you are independent on your own.
Mm.
So the institution takes care of you in terms of provision of some basic needs, a shelter, food, stuffs, and all that. Probably they start settling you into a kind of a skills learning program or life skill programs. And then if you're able to secure yourself a job of any kind, then eventually you're now detached from the institution into the community.
Okay.
However, for these dear ones, several of them, and they've been a group of around 10 up to date, you won't believe, but they are still in the care institution. But every time there is a blueprint or there's a change of management, the management has to carry the burden, quote unquote. I have a voice because at one point it was not all gloom. I was taken to high school. I went through my high school education, and every time we closed, that was home. Of course, things changed when I wanted now to go to college. Again, we were affected because there was a blueprint change. There was a change of management, and so there was discontinuity of the program. And luckily for me, the church took over, took care of me. I went to the Kenya Medical Training College and I did my nursing. But unfortunately for those, and this is the bad part, because there is an attachment. I mean, you cannot grow with a person, even hapo kwa kijiji. You grow with a person, that person becomes a part of
They become like your sibling.
Yes. And so we feel that some of us are in an institution, but we don't know. We don't know really what is happening to them. There is no education. There is no further growth. Of course, now they are full adults, but their needs, they're only being taken care of in terms of where they sleep,
And
what they eat.
And maybe it's not a balanced diet.
Well, I think for the balance diet, they try. I'm not so sure. But there was a time we were even barred from accessing the place, whereby if I even want to visit today with my wife, for example, friends, like there is a whole protocol. You getting permission to access home.
Now, we had gotten to this point of if the programs that are used to check you out of this institution.
Yes.
So we have the halfway houses.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not ending up in the halfway house, where are you ending? Where's the second place that you're going?
So for those who have their guardians, there is the tracing.
Mm-hmm.
There is the contact tracing done by the social work department, which is their role.
Yeah.
And so they've really tried to really connect most of us to our roots and homes. And unfortunately or fortunately, some are still not well up. And so you can imagine a disabled person being integrated back to home. East, west, of course, home is best. But that reception, in 20 years, you've not been together with us.
Yeah.
Some of them have never come to visit their own. They know that they are in the institution, but they'll never. So you can imagine in terms of succession, land, inheritance, and all that, we really don't know who will. We've learned, sadly, and sorry to mention this, we've learned that some of them, their lives were cut short. And actually they passed on because of the conditions
that they are living in.
They are living in. We appreciate the topography of this land. Our Kenyan land, some of the areas are highlands, others are hilly. You can imagine in a wheelchair, you cannot be able to access the place. And we are glad that with time, but of course in our rural homes, we are still far from persons with disability-friendly environments. So some of them never make it.
So I'm curious to know, out of those people who have passed away, what was the case that was maybe as a result of the unfriendliness and the inability to access what they need? What was it? Was it because it was a wheelchair and they rolled down, or based on what you hear?
One of them had the similar condition, the spina bifida, and for him it was a little bit severe. So he had both what we call incontinence of stool and urine. He used a wheelchair. So that meant several things: accessibility, a wheelchair which is able to access the home and all that. Then that care and psychological support and family support. So he required timely checkups in the hospital. He had to do what we call intermittent catheterization. So he did have to that access. Right now, I'm a part of a program of what we call the young adults with persons with hydrocephalus and spina bifida. And currently, we are even actually now exploring issues of sexuality for persons who have such disabilities, and now they are married.
Yeah.
As a young person, if you don't have such an access to such a welfare group, sorry, you'll be almost in the darkness. You won't know what the current generation is doing to themselves to help themselves and all that. Mm-hmm. And of course, we are saying learning opportunities, work and all that. Because, yes, I may be disabled, but upright here, I'm well.
Yeah.
Of course, it becomes a double tragedy for persons with mental challenges. And I know, and you remember a case in scenario 2 years ago.
When we met.
Don't
mention the name.
Oh, sorry, we are introducing you now. Yeah, we met 2 years ago in such a scenario.
Yeah.
And this is a brother whom personally we stayed with him for 10 years before I got married.
Yeah.
When we left the institution, I stayed with him as a brother. And he was working. He had his life. I had my life. Mm-hmm. But we stayed under one roof. Mm-hmm. And one day, well, in Kijabe doing my studies, undergraduate studies. I got this call, and I'm told so and so has been put behind bars, and I'm asking why. Wow, there is this and this has happened. He's been alleged to have defiled a minor, and I asked how. Was the guy allowed to express himself? Was there a person to help? Because definitely this is a person who requires an assistance.
Yeah.
And in such circumstances, either fear, intimidation, coercion would have been employed for him to find himself on the wrong side of the law.
Yeah.
And we began a long journey. And I'm grateful to the organization because as we speak, the guy is back. He's back to the community. As we speak, he's now working. He's living up with his family. And I'm very sure in your archives you have his story.
Yes.
But what happened is that this guy never had assistance. So fortunately, he finds himself to the lowest part of the legal system, which today probably I'm pleased to say, at one point I'll share, the court found out that we don't have a straightforward mechanism in the legal justice to help these people when they find themselves, because all of us can find ourselves in the wrong side of the law. But this brother of mine, this friend of ours, went to the remand. He was innocent. Never given an opportunity to defend himself.
Yes.
Never got an assistance
to express
himself. The medical reports that were done were not complete as the law requires, because you have to have these two, both the culprit and the accused. They are supposed to be taken to a hospital. A medical exam is done onto them. A record is given, and testimony is given before a court of law. So he ends up, sadly, he becomes depressed again. A few of us would tell a depressed, mentally challenged person.
Yes.
Few of us. Unless for those who have grown with them, we can tell so
today he's not doing good.
He's not doing good.
Yes.
And there are moments, of course, some of them have to live with treatment throughout their life. Because, again, some of them are associated with epilepsy. Some of them are associated with some mental illnesses. And so they have to rely on medication. And that peaceful environment.
Yes.
Anytime they are coerced or pushed to the wall, they break down.
Yes.
So this guy lands where? In the Mathare hospital. Of course, being a criminal case, a state case, he's put on the side of criminals and not the usual, the civil side. Of course, we did our best. We found a pro bono lawyer and a team that assisted us way much after. He becomes depressed. It's until we visit the facility and tell the nurses, no, we don't think our brother needs this medication because already he's depressed down. And the moment they stop, the guy comes up. But we are grateful we found assistance. And of course, when he was presented to the court, somebody had done papers in English. This guy cannot read. He cannot read because of his intellectual limitations.
He cannot understand
English. He cannot understand English. The judge asking him questions in English. So the prosecutor is in a hurry to speak in Swahili, which again he may not be coherent with.
Yes.
And it was challenging. I almost broke into tears when I attended one of the sessions. And the judge on the other side was a little bit harsh. But thank God to the bono lawyer who assisted us, and she threw the spanner into the works where she asked, do we have a legal framework where the mental persons with limitations, challenges are tried in a very straightforward manner? Because we look, there are flaws. Even while we are here, we have flaws. And until one day the judge agrees that yes, there were flaws to try this kind of a person. And actually there is almost no case because even the parents to the accused or to the culprit never showed up. And we are not saying, neither are we condoning to any wrongdoing, no. All we are saying is give that person the right support,
yeah,
even during legal issues. Yeah.
So I'm still taking you back.
No worry.
You were talking about we were talking about this guy who had spina bifida and was on a wheelchair and he ended up dying. So
yes,
what really transpired? Did he die as a result of inability to access facilities, or was it natural causes?
That guy was in and out of hospital so many times. He required a special kind of a sitting because of what we call bed sores.
Yeah.
So with now the background of the nursing I have, I am able to tell what complicated. There are several things, infections to the urinary system because there were wounds, and of course now due to the wounds and probably a poor diet and all that, and plus of course depression. You are 21 years of age. You have a condition. Nobody is here nearby to help you. You are in the interiors of Muranga. Muranga. Luckily, Muranga is where I got my wife. But you can imagine the terrain.
Yeah.
The terrain itself,
hilly.
it's hilly. So inaccessibility. Now, of course, your own health, diet, and infections would have cut short his life.
So what I'm getting from this bit of conversation is there is a gap between between this place where you need to come out of the system and into society. So there is a big challenge there because first, we are not educated on how to accept you and to have you fully within the community. And if you're coming out of the system, were you like taken through a sort of counseling, like this is where you're going, this is what you expect, and or someone to hold your hand as you're trying to adjust yourself into a community, because you're in this place where you are guarded, quote unquote, and then you are out here where it's free world, it's free society, and there's the law and everything. So for this individual to finally end up in the wrong hands of the law, is there support that you get?
There is a gap, sadly. 50 years post-independence in this nation, we still have gaps. Yeah. And sadly, one of the most vulnerable places are the care institutions. We have a society as we speak called KESCA, where we have integrated all caregivers who have left different institutions in this land, and basically Nairobi plus other environs. And we still are saddened by the events. Yes, there is a gap, to answer your question directly. Why? Because I remember clearly when we were placed in the community, in the house or in the plot that we were placed, we were deemed as thugs. Of course, the neighbors like, wow, there are 5 young men around. They are energetic. We don't know them. We don't know who they are. All we know, they were in the institution. We don't know their tabias. We don't know their way of life. We were suspects. A cloth, a chicken getting lost, number one suspect. Sadly, they didn't know that we had values. And up to today, one of the greater things with God is because where we were raised, there were values. We say there was a school.
Yeah.
And so, yes, the transitional program is still wanting, sadly, to date. And the disconnect is here. There are sponsors who are taking care of you. Most institutions would not disclose to the sponsors that you are leaving the institution for the continuum of that financial assistance.
Support, yes.
And sometimes stories are cooked of your whereabouts. Now there are those who make up to the campuses, schools like me. There are many who never make past class 8. And they are just either taken back or they are rejoined to a distant relative. And at this juncture, I would want to mention the most vulnerable people are the ladies. Definitely, the ladies who are also, some of them may have mental illnesses or challenges or limitations, disabilities. And even now, guys, we are in the era where we are saying, no, not only the girls, but the boys. And so the guys, some of them become drunkards. Some of them, a few of them have had a difficult life because of even their previous life, delinquencies and all that, which probably due to undivided or divided attention. They were probably something was never caught up to be corrected. And so they end up back to the streets. And sadly, as you said or asked, yes, there is a gap. It's a gap that we hope very soon it should be taken care of.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's touch on employment. Now you've left the care institution.
Sure.
At 21.
Yes, for me.
And even for the person who is mentally disabled.
Yes.
And cannot proceed to school.
Sure.
But you can do other jobs.
Yes.
So, employment.
Wow, employment, it really depended on, okay, for me, got allowed the open doors. As I said, I was already, personally, I had made my way into the community, had made friends and all that in the church. So the church became my supporting system. When I went to college and cleared after qualifying, I was able to secure a job through a friend. I was first employed with an NGO and then eventually got back to the hospital. And Kijabe was my first major hospital where I worked. So it was easy for me. But for many of us, of our brothers, it's not been easy to date. We are in a society, Kenya, where sometimes it's who matters or who do you know for you to get someplace. So for some of us, we've been able to talk to our friends who have shops or backyards like a gas refilling station, whereby some of them are able to do manual jobs and they do it so well. Just involve that person during the 8 hours day, let him get something to feed and all that, and he's good to go. So it's been not easy for some. Some we've been able, I know some of our brothers have, like I know one of us has a kind of a cookery services, chef, or what do you call them? These community things where you cook. You're invited into a function, you cook.
You cook, yeah.
So what he's done, he's gotten like 4 guys into his group. And so when he has a tender or a job, he goes with them. So those who are able to work manually are able to. Those who are able to get now into the mainstream employment, they do. But it's not been easy. But we thank God, because for those who are able to have school, at least basic secondary school education, for those who have good relatives, when they are taken back and settled back with their relatives, some are able to assist them, but some have to get and find a way out. Their institution is no longer involved at all.
No, this I've just remembered. Did you get a birth certificate when you're in the institution?
Yes.
Because you need all these papers to be able to get.
Yes, I remember while I got an opportunity to be in a school exchange program in high school. I was the school captain, and so we went to Norway. And so due now to legal issues, the social worker and the team had to organize how for me to get a birth certificate. I do have it.
Okay, now wait. You were
Abandoned.
No.
Oh,
privileged to get a birth certificate because you're going to Norway.
Sure.
How about this friend of ours who was arrested a while back?
Yes.
Did he get a chance to get her? Is it a requirement? Because it's illegal to not have documents.
Yes.
So and these people have been given, the law has legally handed you to them.
Yes.
Should they look for? So shouldn't the first thing to give you an identification?
So what they did to most of them then, at least most of them were, the social work department at least organized how most of them will get their national IDs.
But what about a birth certificate?
Nah.
So you just live like lawless people because I'm no idea. So now, also now let's come to this point. You've lived your 21 years without having an ID in this institution.
Yes.
I mean, a birth certificate. And then you release me tomorrow. I need a birth certificate to be able to have an ID, right? Mentally, I don't have the mental capacity to express myself.
Sure.
And then the same day I'm released from the institution, I encounter a cop. I'm taken in for loitering.
Yeah, and we've had such
Don't we have a problem there? Because then again, then you don't have anybody to come and claim you. Because the reason why you're being released into the world in the first place is you do not have people who are claiming you don't have family. You know? And now you are in there. Who nani atakutoa? Kutolewa, you need papers.
Yeah.
The institution did not bother to give you. You're understanding?
I am.
And also to the viewer who is here today, like
sure.
It's a very big, it might seem like a small gap, but the moment it's a different ball game, which you've already experienced, for someone who has a mental disability to find themselves on the wrong side of the law.
It's challenging.
It is bad.
It is challenging. Actually, even
it's bad. Let's say it's bad.
Yeah, it's bad. For instance, for that case in Sinada, and actually, as you rightly said, I mean, I'm 21. I'm able to go to party with my friends in the evening and all that. And unfortunately, I find myself kwa hii wanaita jaza or curfew. And the best thing that can happen is probably a friend who knows a friend who knows a friend who knows a friend to reach us. So and so is akona huku na sisi saidieni yeye, and so we have to go there and tell them now. For starters, this person is not privileged in several instances, and so it takes the skills of us. Some of us in our midst, there are those who have trained as social workers. We thank God for that. In our midst, who have trained as medics. In our midst, there are those who are in advocacy programs, and so sometimes we link. So we have a linkage program where we are able to assist each other.
You know, the reason why I've aired that thing is because there are people who are not lucky to encounter people like you.
Yes.
And they are disabled.
Yes.
And they've come out of the system without a birth certificate.
Sure.
So they can't get an ID.
Yes.
And on top of that, they can't get a disability card.
Yes.
And you're out here and you don't have the ability to express yourself. You cannot tell the cop that you are disabled. If you're disabled, you need an identity, you know. Because then how do you... So, well, I feel like... and because, the law has changed now. They are going to start to consider disabilities when they are taking people in. But until before then, you can imagine how many cases of people we had. Because we have people who've stayed in behind bars for even more than 2 weeks because they couldn't raise 500.
Yes.
So imagine that person can't raise the money.
It's been hard. Actually, we live at the masses of the community.
Yeah. And then this community then, there is no education.
Yes.
So, yani, ukitoka huku nje, it's hard.
And so the community, of course, you are like, so and so mwenye hakwangi sawa. So you live at such kind of a description, and at the masses of you're labeled. And even if whether something is right or wrong, you're just there, you're just existing. It's a little bit difficult. And actually, those are the things we are saying, because again, look, for me, I'm now in Rimuru, I'm not in Dagoretti, so I cannot be with you all the time. And it's been challenging. It's been challenging for some of us, some of them, and not only those with mental challenges. You can imagine a person whose parents and guardians were never traced. So that person becomes or lives on his own. It's a little bit challenging. Okay,
so I want us to start concluding.
Yes.
But it's important to give the devil his due. So the proverb says.
Sure.
So, since you left the institution, up to date, what are some of the things that you're like, okay, there's hope?
As I said, things changed when the primary school changed. How it was completed. We had a class 8, and so continuum of education was on merit. Those years in our times. Of course, later on things changed a little bit, but in our times, you passed the exam, you went to high school.
Yes.
You passed the exam, the institution found, of course, there were changes in the institution, and so the managements, as the managements changed, they valued education more. The teachers who were there, of course, advocated for us to be taken further as a person deemed or was enabled. So, I got an education, and that education made me who I am.
Yes.
2, we were involved heavily with life skills programs, and they were both internally and externally.
Yes.
So you could be taken to a camp, a youth camp, or a training, a technical school where you could get life skills program. For those who felt they wouldn't go on with education for one reason or the other, they were able to be trained, and some of them got tailoring skills, other got shoemaking skills, other got carpentry skills, and to date they live with their families because now they've gotten families. They live on that, and we thank God because the school, and I want to say this, education changes you.
Yeah.
It influences you, it makes you, it builds you. Even those who have mental challenges, we've seen some of them being given certificates of excellence in their manual jobs. One of them was given the best, and actually we used it the other day to fetch him a job. And when the employer was like, "Are you guys serious? He will work?" And we told them, "Yes, test him." Late last year in December, I made a call to the boss, and the boss told us, "Wow, your guy is excellent." We told him, "Yeah." So we were able to get those life skills program. Some of us were able to group together and just build themselves up. Some of them have excelled in sports. And I know probably you've seen some ladies, and especially ladies and gentlemen and men who have excelled so much in sports. Most of them we schooled together and or have schooled in special schools. I told you my special school in high school was also an integrated school. So most of them have excelled in sports in their special abilities. And that's what we say determination enables. So if you are determined in life, you'll be enabled, because these days we are saying we are not even disabled. We are enabled differently.
Yes.
Or we are able differently. All of us are disabled. It is only how you use your enablement in life that gives you an upper hand.
Yes.
So we are saying it was not gloom all along. We have that ray of hope, and that ray of hope have shone. Today we call each other and celebrate the different giftings and abilities of each and every one of us. And we have a life.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I feel like, so by the way, now you're a midwife.
Yes.
I'm curious to know, is it a passion that you had when you were still in the institution, or is it through the challenges of being in the care institution that, inspired you?
Nothing. Well, in the children's home, remember I told you we had those kids who are totally defenseless, and they were to be taken care of from feeding, bathing, dressing, and even sleep. They were convalescents. What do you call them? They were bedridden.
Yes.
They were bedridden. And what our house mothers used to do, and I want to say this, I may have not mentioned this. We thank God for the house mothers. Most of them had a great heart, and they taught us just the way they would teach you and would read your intuition. And so some of us were kind of brought up with those nursing skills. Remember, nursing is taking care of a person who is not able to take care of self, whether medically or even at home. That is nursing. Nursing is as old as the Bible itself, including midwifery. And so we were taught. And so we could, during lunch hours, I could take my meal, feed another guy and another guy, leave him changed into new diapers or napkins, leave him comfortable and go to class. That was our routine. During the evenings or even in the mornings, as we took our baths, we used to assist those who couldn't. So make sure that there's, and then for me, it just became a passion. Secondly, because of being in and out of hospital. While in the hospital, sometimes they forgot that I was in the hospital, and so I used to stay 2 more weeks. And so I started working as a nurse, shaking that thermometer. Yeah, and recording. And so it became a part of me.
Okay.
Yes, that's how I loved nursing. And
Yeah.
actually, nursing to me and midwifery is a passion when you just give hope to life to those people who are sick. Yeah, they forgot me.
Oh my God. Yeah. So.
It was by design or default.
But either way, it molded you.
Oh
to
my,
nursing.
it is. I am here. I'm a nurse. Mentoring others. And yeah, the life of caring is a part of me. Yes.
Okay, so.
And it is that art of caring.
Yes.
Sometimes people confuse it with being soft. But it has also built advocacy skills in me, both to the teenagers, both to the youths, both to the person with disability and to the sick.
Yeah.
And also now into the employment. Why? Because for the last 5 years until now, until last year, I was a representative to the workers in matters advocacy, employment and labor issues.
Yes.
And so once I'm on that side, I
You are
will
a different
defend.
person.
I'm a different person.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think we have to come to the end of this interview for today.
Sure.
But thank you. Because now the person who's watching this knows what it means to grow in an institution with
yes.
the highs and the lows. And even people who want to admit their children in such institution, they have something to think about, you know. They have the pros and cons. They can weigh them and make a decision. And so we come to the end of the interview for today. But I'm looking forward to have you talk about other issues.
Welcome.
So we've come to the end of the show, and I trust that you have some insights on what it means when you admit a child who has special needs in a care institution. If you have any feedback, leave it in the comment section. If you want to ask John any questions regarding to spina bifida, midwifery, or nursing, here he will tell us his social media handles, and you can contact him. But until then, be safe and make good choices.